Thank you so much for everyone bringing the vortex together for all of us. A question I have is, do you need to be in the receiving mode to do step 5?
That may be the best question that anyone has asked lately for this reason. Because step 5 is really about having spent quite a bit of time in step 1 when you've been used to being in step 3. So step 5, the way we've been speaking it, is not being mad at yourself for being back in step 1. And so it seems like the answer to that would be, no, you can't be in step 5 because your awareness of being in step 1. But really the answer is yes, you must be in the receiving mode to be in step 5, because what step 5 is, you're going to like this. So you're tuned in, tapped in, you're feeling really good, you're in the receiving mode, and you're getting ideas, and you're following the ideas. And one of those ideas is pointing at a problem, a kind of step 1-y problem. But you were in the receptive mode. You were tuned in, tapped in, turned on when your inner being guided you to that problem, because the solution is so important along the way. If you got that, you're right out here on the leading edge with us. In other words, this is mastery of creation if you got that. If you didn't get that, it's okay. So we'll say it again. Step 1 is, contrast is causing me to ask for things. And in asking, there's often an awareness of what I don't want. And that awareness of what I don't want, if that's the strongest vibration I've got, knowing where I am and what I don't want, even though I've launched what I do want, and even though Source and the universe and law of attraction are mixing it up and helping me, still, I can prevent myself from having that by beating the drum of what put it there. In other words, you do that all the time. It's easy to do. Sort of justifying why you want it by pointing out what's wrong about not having it. So you're more in step 1 than you are in step 3 under those conditions, and so you're not in the receptive mode, and so things aren't working out for you, and maybe your frustration is growing, or maybe you're asking stronger, deeper questions, and in any case your vortex is growing, so a good thing is happening, and in any case your inner being is happy, and so nothing's gone wrong, and in any case it's going to turn out all right, so nothing's wrong, but you're still in step 1, and right now you're in a holding pattern because you're not allowing yourself to be the receiver of what you've been asking for. So then you get distracted, you meditate, you tune in, you sleep in, you are nicer to yourself, you get feeling better, you hang around with fun people, you get in the flow, you're in the receptive mode, and you're there for quite a while. You're in the receptive mode, which means ideas are flowing to you. Ideas are flowing to you, and as the ideas are flowing, it's like your inner being led you right to a problem. Your inner being led you right into a situation where you witnessed something in your business that really matters to you that was going wrong, and your inner being led you right there because you're in the receptive mode. And it was a step 1 moment that your inner being led you to because you were in the receptive mode. You see what we're getting at? This is mastery of all of this. But you didn't get mad. You were glad. You didn't feel upset. You were so appreciative that you came to know that, because you can't make good decisions if you don't have good information, and you're making good decisions. And so, yeah, you got to be in the receptive mode to be in step 5. And when you are in step 5, then step 1 does not bother you at all. Now you are like your inner being who knows you were born for contrast. You no longer condemn contrast. You no longer shy away from contrast. You no longer beat up on yourself when you're in the middle of contrast. You appreciate the contrast that gives you clarity. Don't you? Don't you appreciate the contrast that gives you clarity?
So whereas in the practical, being Jerry for a minute, making this practical is, you once spoke to me about, like with patients, I take care of, I'm a physician, a lot of people know that, is that when they're in step 1, I don't worry about them. I trust in their well-being. I can stay in a higher vibration and calling them forth whatever the next step is.
And why is that? Is it because you've seen a lot of people that were in step 1 and things turned out really good? Or is it because you know that step 1 is the beginning of the process? Or is it because you know that you were all born to do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Why is it that you had enough experience to know that you don't need to worry about them when they're in step 1?
Yes.
So isn't that nice? Your inner being has had enough experience to know that step 1 not only isn't a problem, sometimes it's a clarifying situation, isn't it? Sometimes it's a catalyst to exactly what they want, isn't it? And why would it be different for you?
well, this is what you were sneaky about. So then you asked me, he's like, is there someplace else about it? And you asked me, do you feel that about your staff? And it kind of caught me off guard. I realized when there's a step one moment with the business, and there's something that they're not following a procedure or something that's not going well, is that I get off. I lose the step 5 perspective. But here's what I heard today, is that when I attract something I don't like, and from a loved one or a situation, is that I don't need to worry about me being off. Because that same kind of joy and trust I have in other people's well-being, my son, my husband, our patients, our friends, my inner being sees me the same way. And that's just astonishing to feel that. To feel that when I slip up by attracting some behavior or event, the being pulled over by the car or the bank account or whatever it is, the weather, whatever, the changes is that, yeah, I attracted something unwanted, undesirable, and my inner being, me, the true me, the physically focused me, this is really different. My inner being is fine. Like I have to take care of him. My inner being is fine. But the physically focused me is finally and increasingly not worried about me being a step 1. It's a very interesting shift in perspective.
Then you're living more and more in step 5. Esther was having a meal with a really good friend a while back. And they had just been with a group of people that were 3 generations. So there were grandparents and parents and children all together, all having this wonderful time. And Esther said, because they'd been talking about life and processes and forward and future, and they'd been beating the drum of all of that, and they were both sitting there clearly and purely in the receptive mode. And Esther said, oh, I just love thinking about these little kids and that we get to watch them move through life knowing what we know. And as Esther was salivating over the deliciousness of getting to watch them have their life experience, knowing that there's going to be plenty of step 1 and plenty of step 2 and plenty of step 3, but knowing the goodness of what she was going to get to witness. And her really wise friend, receptive mode friend, said, oh, that must be how our inner beings feel about us. And they both sat there with goosebumps all over them, because it was the first time that Esther had ever viscerally, physically even thought about what she must feel like to her inner being, what the physical part of you must feel like to that non-physical part of you. That we're all in this togetherness is just the essential component that we're talking about here, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's such a short distance to rendezvous with something unwanted. And as soon as you accept the premise that I don't have to blame myself or beat myself up, I just bounce right back.
Let's stop calling contrast unwanted. Let's do what a step 5 consciousness knows. Contrast is wanted. Otherwise, this magnificent Persian rug would be black. It would look like that. Which do you like better, that or that? Show them. Shine it. Like that or that? You like that better or that better? Ooh. You know, the thing about a Persian rug is that there are so many different pieces of thread in it, and no matter what other fabric or wall color you bring to it, that is in there, and it will reflect it back. That's contrast. That's variety. That's better. That's way better. You want contrast. The more contrast you have, the more options you have. The more contrast you have, the more ability you have to create the results that you want. You want contrast. Contrast is not a bad thing. It is the best thing. You are born into it because it is the creative clay of your world. And when you're in step 5, you know that. When something doesn't go the way you want it, you say, ooh, good, something to focus on. Esther broke a whole etagere full of beautiful things that Jerry and Esther had gathered from all around the world. She was dusting, and it fell off the thing, and the top shelf fell, and the second shelf fell, and the third shelf fell, and the fourth shelf, and everything came crashing down, and Jerry came running from the other room, and he said, don't move, and Esther standing there always in her bare feet with shards of glass in the floor and everything, and Esther looked up like, look what I've done, and Jerry said, oh, good, something to want. Something to want, more things to want.
When conscious happens, there's a physical focus that sometimes we get the wobble, and it's not, the contrast is desirable, but there's an emotion sometimes comes a little bit negative. That's what I'm getting at, is that you just bounce.
Let's talk about what the wobble is, though. Is the wobble because contrast is there, or is the wobble there because within the contrast you're not stable?
Right, because you're observing something and desire. I'm calling it a desire. That's what I'm like. It's such a brief thing because I'm easier and easier feeling, oh, okay, that's not something I planned and wanted, but it's good. But I actually do want this because it's clarifying. Like the analogy of if it's cold, it's just information. You just put a sweater on.
It isn't only that you need it, it's that you want it. You want questions because you want answers, and your vortex is full of the answers that you want, but you've got to discover the questions before you're in the receptive mode of the answers. Never said that before. Probably can't say it again. That's really big. You have all kinds of answers that are in your vortex that you're not ready to receive until you ask some questions that make you ready for some answers. So every renegade, every rascal, every person that gives you any trouble, kiss them full on the lips and say to them, bless you for assisting in the becoming of me, because I've come to become, and unless I'm becoming, I'm not happy. I like becoming. It's the most natural thing to me. I got to become. So bless this contrast and these rascals that bring it.
We came to be physical because I wanted contrast. I wanted clarification. I wanted the fun of new ideas and new information. There's no new ideas without some contrast. It's got to be there. Like I chose to be here physically.
More.
Wow.
More. More of what? More clarity, more fun, more exhilaration, more life, more love, more appreciation, more good feelings, more goosebumps, more, and more of all of the things that lead